we see brands all the time that seasonality kills them, kills their profitability.
But thinking about that more, how can you hedge the overall marketing mix with these tactics and not holding them to a perfectly predictive outcome? What does awareness do? Awareness breeds interest. What does interest do? Interest breeds intent. Reed, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, I am super excited to have you here. This has been a long time coming, right? You and I have known each other for a long time, like a long time. You're one of the first people I met in like this space in general. And so I thought you'd be a perfect first guest to have on here. Welcome.
Thank you. A long time in internet years,
Yeah.
as it were, right? Like at least 4 years ago, you
No,
and
way
I
more
did
than
an
that.
episode of, well, you did an episode of Out of Home Insider, if you remember all the way back.
Hmm.
Yeah, but we've been in each other's universe for a very long time at this point. It's exciting. Congratulations on taking the big leap yourself and launching a podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for jumping on here. I've been following the footsteps you've been laying out for everybody. So super excited to have you here, man. My audience honestly probably doesn't necessarily know too much about, who you are and what you do. So let's just kick things off. Introduce yourself, Tim.
Sure, yeah.
Who is Tim?
So I'm Tim Rowe. I'm the host of Out of Home Insider. Out of Home Insider is a top 20 Apple podcast about creating alchemy in the real world. It's the study of how brands show up, the physical intersection with the digital. It's about billboards. That's my really sexy, fancy way of telling you I have a podcast about billboards. And that has been an awesome journey. I've met and interviewed a ton of really, really smart people. I've got opportunities to advise companies and continue to do that, speak on panels and do a bunch of stuff like that, all because of a podcast about billboards. So that's a little bit of who I am in a nutshell when I'm not talking about out of home. I am a father. I'm a dad to a fifth grader, and I coach his basketball team and really involved with all of his activities and things like that. So that's who Tim Rowe is, and
I love
I'm
it.
excited to be here.
I love it. Now, my biggest question, honestly,
Yeah.
I'm in the e-com space. We're in direct to consumer. We focus on direct response. We're on Meta. We're on email. We're on Google. Why billboards?
It's a question that I was asking myself when I found myself working at a billboard company. The billboard company was specifically focused on expanding their footprint with local automotive dealerships, and that was an audience that I had sold a lot to. I think that's originally how we had
Mm-hmm.
connected, was through the world of automotive. So automotive being really data driven, having big local budgets, it was obviously an attractive prospective client for a billboard company who wasn't doing a lot of business with local automotive dealers. For those folks in the audience that don't know as much about kind of local automotive and how it works, is local automotive dealers typically represent the biggest budgets in a market for like local spending. And this billboard company in particular wasn't doing well with the category, and there was more data being introduced around billboards. And hey, I can target Subaru owners, and I can target lease drivers and things like that, and you could start to index some of the billboards. So that attracted me to the billboard company. But once I got there and was helping to introduce more of this data driven billboard targeting to car dealers, I actually asked a nonprofit for access to their Google Analytics. And the reason that I asked for access to their Google Analytics was because they were doing 10 digital billboards in this local market, and a member of their board of directors had a digital marketing agency. So the GA was set up. This is 2019. So universal analytics, conversion goals, all of the really nice stuff. It was set up in a way that we could tell a story if there were one. So about 2 weeks into the campaign, I remember checking their Google Analytics and seeing, wow, organic traffic is up, direct traffic is up, conversion goals, in this case, nonprofit donations were up, and not up like 20%, 30%, like 60%, 80%, which are obscene numbers. 20, 30% is obscene, but 60, 90% in some of these categories and conversion areas. I was like, wait a second. I've never seen anything like this before. I've never seen someone just turn on a tactic and everything goes straight up and to the right. So that warrants a phone call to the marketing director. And I asked her if they were doing anything else. And she said, no, actually, this is our slow time of year. We were just spending the money on billboards as a way to recognize some of the guys who had been through the program. They helped homeless men get back on their feet. So I was like, wait a second, you didn't even expect this to do anything? Well, it's clearly doing something. And that set me on a course to figure out what the heck it is. Why does this work? How does it work? That begat the podcast. And to answer your original question, that's really the answer is it's underpriced offline attention. We're already giving money to Facebook and Google and Amazon for their digital ad properties. Well, guess what? They also happen to be some of the biggest spenders in offline media. Why? Because they understand exactly what their business is. It's taking offline eyeballs, taking that underpriced attention, packaging it up into digital ads with a dashboard, a click-through rate, a conversion mechanism, and reselling it to brands who want like a predictive, deterministic way to scale revenue. Um, but it's that misunderstood in between that really represents the opportunity to do something special and grow faster, gobble up market share, bring down your aggregate CAC. There's a lot of opportunities that out of home can represent to a media mix, and they all typically look and sound like growth and efficiency. So that's my hard sell to ecom. But ultimately, how I discovered it was through a nonprofit with a good GA.
That's crazy. Because like I remember
Crazy.
we used to work on automotive stuff back in the day,
Yeah.
back when we were like an ad agency for automotive, and that's how I got started kind of on the billboard side, like even knowing that it was a space. Because to me, I didn't really know anything about it, and I still don't know nearly as much about it as I probably should. But that was how I thought about it, and so I was like, okay, you're a local, you're a car dealership, or you're like a local bank,
Hmm.
but you're thinking about it more of like a global thing, right? You're thinking about it as not just local businesses. Someone who's selling water bottles could be utilizing out of home.
Totally, because it's priced as physical real estate. And this I think is maybe some of like the educational misunderstanding that as an out of home media community hasn't done a great job of educating marketers, which is when you're buying a billboard, let's just keep it simple. You're buying a billboard in a rural market, right? That's, off the beaten path. You're not buying Times Square, New York City. You're not buying the Sunset Strip. You're just, let's just use random small town USA, and there's a billboard there. And you can scale this all the way up to those big city conversations. I'm buying for a short time, I'm buying that real estate. And whatever I do with that real estate is my choice. I could put a big picture up there of a giraffe. I could put a picture of my logo. I could put something that has to do with my business. I could put a 5-star Google review of my company. How do you want to use the physical real estate? That's kind of like the first thing to absorb with out of home is that it's real estate, it's real estate, it's real estate. If you could own real estate in the physical world, in your desired market, in front of your target audience, what would you want it to do and say for you? Right now, apply that same
Mhm.
methodology, same thinking to the Sunset Strip, to New York Times Square, right? It's all just real estate. What is the real estate worth to you? Okay, cool. So if the billboard is $500 in rural small town USA, the brand might want to ask the question of, well, but how's it going to work for me? How much is it going to make for me? Things like that. The real way to look at it is from that combined CAC. Does my overall cost to acquire a customer come down? Am I seeing more overall website traffic? And then you start to bake in the cost of that and you go, wait a second, it's $500 a month, or it's $5,000 a month, or it's $50,000 a month. But because it's physical real estate, My price isn't going up and down based on, is it Black Friday? Is it Cyber Monday? Are there lots of people buying ads or only a few people buying ads? It's fixed. So you can hedge the rest of your media mix by making an investment in offline attention ownership. So I think if you can lean into that and say, okay, it's not going to be perfectly measurable, but what would I pay? What would I pay for a pop-up shop? Right? Boil it
Mhm.
down to like a price per square foot. You are buying for a short time, you're leasing physical real estate. What could it do for your brand? So I think if you could start to think about it through that lens, it starts to reshape at least how the medium can work for you. Then it's just a matter of, does the math, right? If you sell $150 backyard game, the math might not math, right? Because the
Mhm.
cost is eventually it's just not gonna scale. But if you sell a gym membership, if you sell something with a higher LTV, or you can find that offline attention arbitrage opportunity that is a $500 billboard that drives tons and tons of growth, they're out there. Um, but thinking about that more, how can you hedge the overall marketing mix with these tactics and not holding them to a perfectly predictive outcome?
Got it. I like that. What's interesting, that I think that the thing that caught my attention the most is you said it doesn't fluctuate. It's one fixed price. Because obviously, coming out of Black Friday just now, ad prices were, to the moon, right?
What did you see? What does that mean? To the
It's
moon.
well, so I mean, it varies a ton, but I mean, we had some brands that were just getting started. We literally had a brand run their first ad the day before Black Friday.
Oh, wow. Holy
They
moly.
started on Black Friday, and I was like, it's a tough day to start. But they came out of the gate swinging, 4x return right out of the gate. I'm like, okay, fair enough, cool. But then we have other brands we see where, their CPMs are up, 10, 20, 30, 40%.
Mm,
So I think it does change quite a bit from brand to brand. But what I like about what you're talking about is it doesn't matter what time of the year it is. Because some brands, they have more seasonal things. Black Friday is a good example that's kind of, higher across the board. But you have other brands that maybe are, for example, like a more patriotic brand. Might
hmm
be very big on, or their CPMs might be really high on Veterans Day or
Sure.
Memorial Day. You might have, more of like a golf brand. They're gonna be really high around, any of like the Masters tournament or any
hmm
other, PGA tournaments, or just in summertime in general. Like golf CPMs they're pretty low right now. It's wintertime.
Sure.
But stuff like that like doesn't change you whatsoever, which to me is super interesting because like that's a huge killer for a lot of brands. We see brands all the time that seasonality kills their profitability
Wow.
because they
It's
don't have that
interesting.
that high enough LTV, and they don't have a high enough average order value to actually sustain that high CPM.
hmm
So that's crazy. I didn't even think about that, but that makes perfect sense.
It's a really interesting, yeah, it's a really interesting problem to have. Is that seasonality factor, and I guess it's something that really, as an out of home industry, we don't talk about enough, which is, hey, you can set a stopwatch to this. Like the same. I'm doing some
Mm-hmm.
consulting, as you know, with a truck side advertising company, and what's so cool about that is it creates this look and feel. They're branded last mile delivery trucks. It looks like the truck is full of your product, right? It looks like you're delivering
Yeah.
product all over the place. But what's really cool about that is the price of a truck in New York is the same as the price of a truck in LA. It's the same as the price of a truck in Austin. It's the same as the price, right? So scale it up or down, it's the same price. But go try to buy media in LA and go try to buy media in New York and in Austin. You're going to have wildly different prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to scale predictively when those are variables. The other cool thing about out of home is, and kind of using the branded delivery trucks as an example, is the halo effect. It's instant grassroots credibility at scale. It's authority. It's awareness. What does awareness do? Awareness breeds interest. What does interest do? Interest breeds intent. More people know about you, more people know about your product, your company. Guess what? They're going to go to the Google. They're going to engage with your email, your SMS, your direct mail. all of those other things start to perform better. Why? Instant grassroots credibility at scale. That's the job to be done, and that's what out of home is great at. It's the ultimate superpower.
Yeah, and it makes sense because when I see, Miller Lite or whatever on a truck, I associate everybody else who's on a truck at that same level as Miller Lite. Miller Lite's
Yes.
huge, so I assume that if they're on a truck and you're on a truck, you're the same level as them.
It's
I
a
trust Miller
concept
Lite.
called, right, it's called costly signaling. And it's
Yeah.
exactly that. It's you as a brand sending a signal to the market, your consumers, your competitors, that I've done something that appears to be hard, cost a lot of money, and therefore you should give me celebrity status
Hmm.
in zip code 12345, in local CBSA, DMA region, whatever. Um, yeah, and that's something that you can do with out of home, and like specifically for that brand that they ran their first ad the day before Black Friday. You could do the same thing with out of home, right? Like it doesn't matter if you were a no one the day before, but the day you put up a billboard, you're a celebrity. And it's
Yeah.
the only ad, this is really weird actually. It's the only ad that I've seen people congratulate other people on doing. Have you
That
noticed
is a good
this?
point. That I have seen. Well, I see people who they put their first billboard up and they're going to go and take a picture of it on the side of the road.
Yeah.
I've never seen someone take a picture of their Instagram feed and share their ad.
Ever, 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 ever. I've never seen it. I've yet to see it. And now as we're, getting ready to close out the year, I've been seeing too, like the hey, the best ads from the year type of posts.
Hmm.
And they're all out of home. It's a bus shelter,
Interesting.
it's a poster in the subway station. It's all things taken from the real world.
Interesting. That is
All
trippy.
all of them. Yeah, and
That's
these are not out of home people. These are like leaders at big agencies, Spark Foundry, and
oh wow.
Dentsu, and right, and they're looking at these things and they're saying these are memorable ads. These are ads that
Hmm.
have an impact. So it doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
$50,000 budget. It can be something scrappy. It can be something small scale, and it could just be for that. It could just be to take a picture to run as your Facebook and Instagram creative because it's going to perform that much better. Do it. Just run a test, right?
I was
Buy a
gonna ask
billboard and
about
take a
that.
picture. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk
I was
about
gonna
it.
ask about that. Do people do that? Have you? I mean, I've seen a couple, like just people I know
No,
do
yeah.
that at small scales. But I can imagine like for a brand new brand getting started with that because now you're sharing that credibility as a credibility factor digitally too.
There's a great brand called Carrot Financial,
Okay.
and was part of the team that helped them start this project in out of home, and they've continued with it and done it really successfully. They are financing their access to capital for creators, for influencers. And the way that their biggest growth hack has been putting their influencers on billboards in Times Square, at the Chinese theater. Because what do influencers do? They go create a
Influence.
ton of content around the billboard that they're on and share it with their whole community. So they've created this viral consumption loop, which is we give creators access to capital, we give them credit cards and financing. The way we reward them is by buying billboards for them. They then go stand in front of said billboard, selfie video, post it on their Instagram, tweet it out to all their followers and stuff. And that then gets them more creators because the other creators who aren't on the product go, I want to be on a billboard. How do I get on a billboard? Oh, I have to be a customer of yours. Cool, I'll sign up. I can't get access to capital anyway. And
That's
they've
wild.
create right just based on that
Yeah.
tactic alone of getting influencers to share the pictures of the billboards. That's their whole
Forced
strategy.
virality.
Yeah,
Forced virality. That is
real
a
smart.
wild strategy. I'm
Yeah,
curious to see now, as out of home starts to be, I think it's starting to just start to penetrate like the direct to consumer e-com market. I've
yeah.
seen a few more brands who start to dabble in a little bit, especially in Salt Lake. So when we fly back to Salt Lake, I started to see a few more e-com brands starting to get some billboards up there. think it's going to start pushing a little bit further. I'm really curious to see what happens with that in the e-com space specifically, because it's not something that people talk about. Like we
I
don't talk about that very often,
I don't, yeah, I
but
don't see
it's
it
huge.
as a conversation. It is
Yeah.
huge, literally and figuratively as an opportunity. So let's talk about Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Salt Lake is an interesting market too, and this is some of like the mindset when you start to think about this from a how do I plan this? How do I plan this as a piece of my strategy? What's so cool about Salt Lake, and I've never been there, but I can just see it from the map and I can see it from the results that I've seen from campaigns and I can see it from the anecdote that you just shared. How is Salt Lake laid out? It's one major corridor vertically, right? Up and down, and
Yep.
then it has
Exactly.
arteries that come off of it. So it's a really easy market to buy from an out of home perspective because I know where I need to cover off, right? I need to, Ogden, Provo, Salt Lake City, and I need to keep that all in the I-15 corridor. Maybe there's some key points of interest. Maybe I'm sold in Dick's or, what's out there, Shields. Thinking
Mm-hmm.
about some of the other venues that might be out there. Let me find a few that are close to the point of interest, and wham bam, thank you, ma'am. I just planned my media strategy in Salt Lake.
Done. Perfect.
Done. Go to New York, it's totally different. Which neighborhood do you want to be in? Right? Which neighborhood within the neighborhood? Okay, cool. You want to be in this neighborhood. What's the right format? Maybe it's digital screens on the point of sale in the bodega, right? That the customer facing screen when they walk up and it's playing a video of the new Red Bull or whatever, right? Maybe that's the best opportunity. It becomes as much about understanding like audience and behavior and being able to match it to those moments where you can make the biggest brand impact. And there's a lot of cool ways to do it. We've talked about a few. I think that the important part is having a tolerance to test. It might not show up right away. The targeting is probably the easiest part because like it's always been real world deterministic. Like the real world has always been more targeted than the internet. Now we have the data to kind of back it up. Um, the measurement doesn't matter if you don't get the creative right. Creative's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Ogilvy says 7 words or less. It might be even less than that, right? You've got a moment. And that moment could be in passing on a billboard, or it could be stuck in traffic behind a box truck, right? Thinking again about the context, about the moment, the opportunity. What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? What's the message I want to deliver? What's the perception that I want to convey to the person when they're experiencing my message in whatever moment that they're in? I think a good place to start with that is the Google micro moments. I know it's kind of fallen off, but I think it's a good way to think because what are the four key micro moments? When someone wants to know something, do something, buy something, or go somewhere, right? So like those are very clear inflection points in the buyer's journey. If we just for a moment say, hey, I don't want to focus on the buy moment, I want to focus on educating. I want to focus on enabling. I want to focus on influencing other key moments in the buyer's journey, the physical buyer's journey. What moments are they? Maybe it makes sense to show up on a printed printed sign above a urinal. Maybe that's where your brand should be. In sports bars, in college towns, above a urinal. Maybe that's exactly the spot you should be, but it's that exercise of thinking through it with your team. But it is that exercise. It's that exercise of going through it with your team. And really, I think that that's just like a good sound
Mm-hmm.
fundamental of marketing piece, like understanding your ICP, like understand who your customers are, and do they drive? Do they make multiple stops? Is this someone who's doing multiple stops throughout their day, dropping the kids at school, and then running to pick up a grocery order to grab the dry cleaning before getting back in time to pick up their kid from a half day at school? Maybe how do I want to be a part of their journey? Right? Is that different than somebody who only makes one designated trip a week? Really, really working through some of those details. And then I think you're going to see there's a bunch of opportunities that could make sense and then go test them.
So here's a question for you. So now on socials, for example,
Yeah.
so where we play, there are a lot of rules, a lot of regulations. There's a
Mhm.
lot of rules of what I can say, what I can't say. Seems like every day some ad gets flagged, taken down. How does that same concept apply over to out of home?
I'll start top of
Perfect.
funnel. I'll
Let's
move
do it.
down. So, as far as I'm concerned, the reason that I love out of home so much is it is the last bastion of free speech. What do I mean by that? It is up to the media owner, it is up to the publisher's discretion of what creative they take. With that being said, I have personally worked on campaigns that I disagreed with politically, religiously, sexually, like very decisive content. Let me walk that back. Very divisive content that, could would never get approved on any social. But as a channel, our job is to facilitate free speech. That's really what out of home is a facilitation of free speech. So it's up to the media owner what gets approved. That could vary if you're working with a small independent billboard company in your local market and you're talking directly with the owner. Um, Probably going to have more flexibility there than if you're working with a big
Mhm.
publicly traded company. With that being said, there's a lot of stuff that shows up on billboards or on out of home ad placements that people find appalling. Um, so it's as extreme as that. But going the other way too is because everyone is experiencing your campaign at the same time, everyone's experiencing it. You and I are walking down the street, we both see the same billboard, we
Mhm.
have our own experience. Right? It means something to you that's different than what it means to me. It's different than the other people behind us, and that's a beautiful thing, right? Because everyone's experiencing it. So you get bigger reach as a brand, right? Back to that awareness piece of the puzzle. So it's new reach, but because everyone's experiencing it collectively, it gives you permission as a brand to take a little bit more risk, to be a little bit more out there. Now, I'm not saying do things that are divisive and, piss people off, but I'll give you a great example. Worked with a sports betting client a couple years ago, and they wanted to do transit on the Boston mass transit system. Their target demo, 25 to 35-year-old white collar males making above $120,000 a year. Right? So the creative, if it was a display ad, it probably never gets approved. The copy we ran, the name of the name of the brand, the name of the app is called Jock Market, and basically the idea is to trade players like stocks. So buy them when they have a bad week, sell them when they have a good week, right? Buy low,
Oh
sell high.
wow.
So the copy we ran was there's a new way to play with your jock. Okay,
No
a
way.
100%.
No
And we
way.
ran that on hundreds,
Oh
on
my
hundreds,
gosh.
on hundreds and hundreds of subway cars around Boston. And there was,
That's amazing.
here's the part where it's even more amazing. And kudos to the brand for exhibiting some discipline and control here. But you could see where maybe somebody different totally leans into this. One of the pictures that we got back from the media company, the publisher, there was an attractive woman sitting in the seat on the train, and she was just like reading the creative. The brand exhibited great discretion and control, but obviously you could see where that would go. Turn that into a meme, slap it on the internet, press go. Like, and
Yeah.
there's brands that are vying for those moments, right? Where that could be the moment that sets their brand on a totally different trajectory, good or bad, right? But in this case, probably wouldn't have been a bad thing if they had done that. Am I saying it's the right thing to do? Not necessarily. Am I saying it's a thing you could have done? 100%. 100%, right?
Yeah.
Because why? It was a picture taken of public space. In the public space, this person was not a hired model. This was just someone sitting on the train, and the mass transit authority was taking a picture of the thing to prove that it was there. So it was a moment, right? It was a moment, and how you parlay these things can make or break a campaign. We're seeing lots of brands like Carrot Financial, but even more than that, who are leaning into like the CGI generated 3D kind of fake out of home campaigns that you see popping up all over socials. Like clearly there's not
Yeah.
100-foot tall Barbie walking through Dubai. I get that. Right? Like and maybe there's still some people on the internet that think some of these things are real. I don't think that North Face really got a puffy jacket on Big Ben in London. Probably didn't happen. I get that. But there are these viral moments. They're viral
Yeah.
moments that are more valuable than whatever the attention could have been in the real world. So
Yeah.
something else to think
We've
about.
been seeing that a lot more. We've been seeing that kind of stuff a lot. One of the things we see a lot of brands testing and actually having really good success with right now is CGI.
What do you mean?
Whether it's product renders, stuff like that. We see a lot of brands using AI content,
Really?
stuff like Midjourney, building out content because it's faster, right? In the e-com space, we're always pumping out content. Like content is typically the biggest pinch point for not all brands, but for a lot of brands. Coordinating with models, coordinating with logistics of product, all these different photo shoots. I can just plug it into Midjourney, get my Midjourney trained up, which I am not an expert by any means. People are, they can crank it out fairly quickly. Now you have something that would have been very, very expensive for you to actually create in the real world. I can make it in Midjourney for pennies on the dollar.
Let me ask you this. Did you see this BMW post that's been getting totally
I don't think so.
okay.
If it's a BMW, I'm probably blocking it. I don't want to see a BMW on my
So
feed. More of a Mercedes kind of
they
guy.
posted a picture to their Instagram that was AI generated and someone like just like it was very easy to tell that it was an AI, like
Okay.
there was something wrong with the car, like the deer were standing on top of the fence, like it was obviously AI, but BMW posted it to their account. What do you think that the brand risks are of using AI generated content for product related collateral?
It's a it's a great question. So I think obviously you need to have your approval process
Mm.
dialed in. But I'm gonna turn this back though.
Okay.
Because AI content is huge right now. People are talking about it, people are starting to see it. It's becoming more of a trend. Name another BMW ad you've seen in the last 90
That's a
days.
damn fine question, actually. It's a really, really great point. It's given us a reason to talk about BMW.
Exactly.
Wow.
So 2 years ago, one of my most memorable ads I've ever seen was a Toyota ad.
Okay.
And Toyota, very big in adventure, outdoor, hiking, mountain biking,
Yep.
camping. They posted a picture of a 4Runner with a guy mountain biking who looked like he'd never been mountain biking before.
I think, did you post this?
Like
I feel like I remember it.
I probably did because I thought it was
Yeah.
hilarious. I mean, this was like something you would not go on an actual trail with. You
And
wouldn't
you are
want to
part
ride
of
this
that.
bike.
Like you're an outdoorsy
Yeah.
guy. You ride dirt bikes,
Yep.
you're mountain biking, you are actually the target demo that they were trying to reach.
Exactly. And so I see this just right away, and I'm like, comments, go look at comments. And it is, thousands and thousands of comments of people just bashing it. And then I started thinking about it. That was probably one of the best posts they could have made.
Right. Did they stop selling Forerunners? I don't think
Absolutely
it hurt them
not.
one bit.
Not at all. In fact, they got their audience to share it with other people in that audience.
Wow.
I shared it to all my mountain biking
Wow.
friends. Look at this 4Runner.
Right. And deep down,
So
that's not the Forerunner. You're like, no, it's a great truck. It's built. It's capable. Like, wow,
exactly.
that's really interesting. The intentional
And so
mistakes.
exactly. And I can see that being not for all brands, but people who are brands at that
Yeah.
level. I could see that being, where you're purposely going against what you should be doing, what your audience expects.
It's really
And I
interesting.
can see that being, and it's less of an AI thing. I mean, that was definitely not an AI driven image, but I can see that being a big trend for some brands at least. I think that's something that could be helpful. But the consequences of having AI doing that can also have the opposite effect.
You go badly,
right? Well, yeah. I mean, Toyota with their 4Runner, they have enough brand equity, and they have people know enough about a 4Runner to know that that's not who should be driving this 4Runner. But if I didn't know that, I'd be like, not for me. I want something that an actual mountain biker would be driving.
Right.
And so if you don't have that brand equity that you're associating that product with what you should be associating it with, now you just totally miss the mark and you ruined it.
Great point. You've got to
So it
earn
could
that.
go either way. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for BMW, they've earned that. Toyota, they've earned that. Now somebody else where I'm just going to see that as like, did you do that on purpose? Was that a mistake? I'm going to look at that as a bad ad. So you're going to have to really, really get that dialed in. And AI is not perfect by any means. Time and a place for it for sure. But I think with AI, it's to be able to do things that you couldn't either afford to do in the real world or you couldn't do logistically.
How are you using AI within your own company?
Honestly, not enough. AI is something that I don't personally use a ton. We use it a lot for corrections.
Okay.
So, for example, with us, we write a ton of code, like a ton of code. If you miss one period, code's not going to work.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I can go and proof it.
So you give the
Or let's
code
say I
to
have
the
an issue.
AI to make sure quality control.
Exactly. Or let's say I need something real quick and I don't quite know how to do it. I don't want to spend 3 hours learning how to do something. I can just go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I need to do this, 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 and this. It'll spit out the code for me.
Right. Do it. Just go do the thing.
Exactly. And so I think there's a use case for that for sure. I use it a ton in Shopify where I need something just quick. I just need a quick section, something simple, something a little more generic framework wise. Easy. It just takes that framework right out of it.
The reality is,
and then I can go and tweak it as
that's
needed.
not the best use of your time. It's not, and like even if that was the best use of, right? So let's play it all the way out. Even if there is someone who that is the best use of their human time, the question you then have to follow it up with is, where is the point of diminishing returns? And it's probably someplace closer to, let me just ask the AI, because it's
Exactly.
not going to make sense for me to pay someone to do this, the need to go back and forth to communicate these things, or I could just say, hey, ChatGPT, here's the exact output that I need. Here are the parameters by which I need it, generate it. And then to be able to, in real time, give that feedback of that doesn't look right. Please fix this, optimize to that. Like, there's no VA in the world that can respond and generate an output that quickly for human sourced inputs. I think that's the really important part.
Exactly.
It's got right. It's got to be human sourced input.
Yep. And one thing to note on there is it's time, right? It's just the speed of
Yeah.
execution. We could go and write 1,000 lines of code. How long is that going to take though? I could go tell ChatGPT, hey, write me 1,000 lines of code for this. As long as that input is correct from the human, the output is going to be correct. There is no human error. Because when you write 1,000 lines of code, there's going to be an error
At some point, right? Because we're fallible, right? But if the source information, if the source is correct, and you've got a great human conductor who's saying do this and then do that, I think it becomes even more important to understand the order of operations and why it exists. What order do these
That's
need?
why we have a process.
Yes, right. And that's going to be who wins, who can figure out how to make the robots work for them, but who has the frameworks, who understands the order of operations, who understands how to make the robots do the thing that needs to get done.
Yep, exactly. And one thing to throw out there even further is it's making sure that the robots are doing the right thing.
Yeah, right.
Right? Because it all comes back into that input. Maybe your input, you think it's the right thing. You go and train your robot to do the right thing, but it's not the right thing. So having the process and the foundation to make sure that you are putting the right input in there the first time, because again, there's always going to be human error. That's what we use AI to reduce. How can we reduce AI or reduce human error even more? Making sure that input there is as correct as possible. Because the output's only going to be as good as the input. If you don't have a good input, you're not going to have a good output. How can we make sure our output's going to be as good as possible? Comes back into our initial getting the right input.
Get the right input.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's, how are you thinking about, and maybe it's too early to totally flesh it out, but how are you thinking about the time you get back, the time that you get back that AI is saving you? How are you thinking about reinvesting that into the business?
So for me, a lot of that comes into our team. So I'm not the one writing our
Mhm.
code. You wouldn't want me to write your code. It would not be good. We have amazing developers, but again, amazing developers are human. Our time of review has probably been cut by 80%
Wow.
on anything hard code. Now Shopify, Webflow, it's not a ton of hard code, but on that stuff, it's 80% less,
It's incredible.
right? It's huge. So that speeds our projects up. It speeds our internal review process up. But what it also does, and I think this is one of the biggest factors, is it speeds up any like client communication there
Mm.
where there is an error that we might not have seen necessarily. Because now there's just not going to be an error. There is no error that we couldn't have missed. And again, going back to it, we're human, right? We do miss things. And so when we have that like consistency there, we don't miss things now because now we're looking at less things.
And that's got to be a
We don't need to.
right. That's got to be good for your clients because now they're getting the thing that they want faster and getting live sooner and making more money quicker or whatever the direct application
Exactly.
is. Huh.
Exactly. Our review process used to be about 90 minutes. Now it's about 15.
Wow. Wow. Right. And just, I mean, that compounded out over multiple reviews, over multiple meetings, over the course of a year, hundreds of hours, dozens of
Yeah,
new projects, additional,
exactly.
customer time spent. It's about
Yeah.
stealing back as much time to do the things that only a human can do, I think, increasingly
Ex-
more.
yeah, and I think on the time standpoint, it's not necessarily the time to do it, but it's the time to do it correctly.
Mm,
Because I can do something, it might take me 8 hours to do something, but I'm gonna have to go and review it for an hour
mhm,
and then fix it. Now it's two
mhm,
hours of that eight
mhm.
hours. Why didn't I just spend 6 hours doing it right the first time?
Right.
With AI, now you did it in 6 hours. Or, I mean, that's obviously a hypothetical example there, but I think that's where that AI is really coming into play in our world
Yeah.
right now, is that consistency and mistake reduction.
Right.
Now we have a more reliable, consistent product.
And I got to imagine, and just as you're saying that, like getting your team back to what is the highest and best use of their time.
Exactly. It just breaks it down further and further and further. There's a snowball effect. Should I be the one developing? Absolutely not. Now, should Lauren be the one developing? Absolutely. But at the same time, even taking it one step further, if it's a very simple, tedious structure to build, like we're building the same section, we've built it 100
Mhm.
times, why write that code again?
Right.
It's already
If we
there.
were building a car, right? I love watching the like car building shows with my son. Right. If we have a wiring kit for this, if we have a known way of doing this, then why are we going to reinvent it every time? There's no extra points for. Uh, I'm coaching
Exactly.
basketball right now. A bunch of the kids have been like taking free throws from behind the free throw line, like a foot and a half behind. And I keep telling them, like, guys, they don't give you any extra points for standing that far back. It's the same points, right? So just take
Yeah.
step up to the line, take all the space that you
Yeah.
have available, because yeah, no one's giving you any extra credit on the other side.
Exactly. Only thing that matters is getting the ball in the hoop,
Getting the ball in the hoop.
right? Get it in there. That's all that matters. Now, okay, so I'm gonna shift gears on you here a little bit. We've been talking about out of home. We've been talking about marketing a lot. You're a father. You have a fifth. He's in fifth
He's
grade
in
now.
fifth grade.
Fifth grade. You're coaching basketball. How do you balance being a dad and running a company? Because I run a company and I don't have any idea how you can do that and have the time to do that. My hat is off to you.
The real answer is I don't think about balance. I kid that I'm like a shark, and if I stop swimming, I'll die. I don't know how to not be in motion. So I'm maybe not a great example of what would be traditionally viewed as balance, but I believe I lead a perfectly balanced life, and I'm fulfilled in every way, and I go to bed fulfilled at night, and I wake up invigorated in the morning. So it might look like obsession or extremism to someone else, but I think that that's kind of the common thread between, folks that choose to do what we do and stand in the breach each day. So balance, I don't have any great tips on. In terms of how I partition my time, time blocking is huge. I started using Motion, which is an AI
Mm-hmm.
powered calendar app. That has been immensely helpful to give it parameters and say, this is the structure that I want my days to fall within. Because I think that this can be the trap sometimes, right? And professionally, we call it scope creep, but in life, we call it being overwhelmed. And it's when we say yes to too
Yeah.
many things. Um,
We call it being a normal
we
human
call it a
being, right?
normal human being. I am very protective of my calendar, obsessively protective. If if someone sends me, like, someone wants to jump on a quick Zoom, doesn't happen in my world. It doesn't happen in my world. I have time blocks. Those time blocks are dedicated for that work. Sometimes I'll just have a 2 hour time block to get random shit done. Like today, I'm gonna check out a little bit early to get some Christmas shopping done because I've time blocked it. Because I was on the
Mm.
computer at 7 o'clock this morning for 2 hours before the rest of the team started and got a ton of stuff done in that time block. So I'm that's the biggest hack for me in being able to make it all work is obsessively protecting my calendar to the point where people might think you're rude, but if you don't defend the calendar, no one's going to protect it for you. And then you will get overwhelmed, and then you will get scope creep, and then you will get burnt out, and then all of those things start to happen. So,
Yeah.
no great answer on balance, but I think that it starts with your calendar.
I think that's the perfect answer, right? I'm protective of my calendar, probably not as protective as you. I don't necessarily need to be though, right? I don't have kids. And so I don't have that like, need to be as protective of my calendar just because there hasn't had that opportunity yet. But as a dad, someday when I'm a dad, my whole life is going to be around my kids.
Totally.
And so I'm in business because I want to have a good life with my
Yes.
family, right? And so I can see that of being like for me, I'd be almost hyper obsessive over work to provide that good life for my family. The challenge though, and I think going back to your calendar, making sure that I'm not being overly obsessive on the calendar, right? Making sure that I'm doing the things that I need to do where, when it's family time, it's family time. And I talk to a lot of people, a lot of parents who their time with their family is time with their family. It's phones down, phone in the other room. They're not on the computer. It's like comes back to being present. See, a lot of people have an issue with that too, where when they're around family, they're still on their computer. They're still checking Slack. Do you do anything like that? Do you put your phone in the other room around the
I
family?
mean, you can see right behind me, you see some stuffed animals. They're not mine, I promise. My desk is in the family room, and my situation is a little different. I'm a single dad, and my son's here every other weekend. So I don't know what it's like having a spouse and having a family, every day. Now, with that being said, he has sports every day. Like, I see my son almost every day, but I don't necessarily have like a family in this space all the time. With that being said, on the weekends when he's here, he sees me work. He also, I think most importantly, he sees when he's here and my workday is done, my workday is done. The computer goes off for the night. It's shut off. He sees me sign off. Like, I think that that's actually an important part. He sees that I'm consistent. He sees that when he's here, when it's us time, nothing else comes above that. And as a business owner, I've made a few rules for myself. One, I'll never wear a suit for money again. Just out of the box. I donated all my suits during COVID. You couldn't pay me any amount of money to get back in one. So I won't do anything that requires me to wear a suit for money. The other thing is I won't do anything for money that interferes with time with my son. And that's a rule that I have. And I've missed conferences and I've missed speaking opportunities and I've missed none of it. I've missed none of it, right? Because what I got back was time I intentionally designated was more important than anything else with my son. So I think setting some of those boundaries, and maybe it comes back to the calendar and being protective of that time, but I'm very intentional with him knowing that when it's us time. And also when it's a Saturday and he's just watching YouTube and he doesn't want to hang out with me, I'm going to jump on the computer and I might get 2 hours of stuff done. I might edit a podcast and schedule a week's worth of tweets in 2 hours because I've stolen back time with AI. I've learned how to compress a lot of work into short windows because of that. So now I can make the most of my time and I don't need to be on my computer until 10 o'clock at night to get all the things done that I need to get done because I've been particular about how I structure my day.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, that's comes back down to structure,
Structure.
right? It comes back into, using tools at your discretion, get your time back. Comes into structure
And I'm
and consistency. Consistently
I'm
structure.
not that guy, by the way. Like I was in the Marines and I was so like once a Marine, always a Marine. So I'm a Marine. That is not where my structure comes from at all. Like I'm an ADHD kid.
Interesting.
I that's where like motion specifically for folks that aren't familiar with the app, you set the parameters and I'm able to just say, hey, I have a task that's going to take me an hour and a half and I need to get it done by this date. I actually don't have the functioning power to sit down, stare at my calendar, and say, all right, where can I slot in like this hour and a half? That back to the time blocking, I say this is the thing I need to get done. This is how long I think it's going to need to take to get done, and I either want to get it done in one setting or two, and then I give it to motion. It's like having an executive assistant, but I don't have the budget for an executive assistant, so I use AI.
Not yet.
So, but like not yet, but now I also am to the point where like, why would I? What would an executive assistant do for me more than motion and Calendly and chat GPT? You
Fair
know what
enough.
I mean? Like so, but it's
Yeah.
because of this obsessive focus on stealing back time. How can I steal back time? That has been the biggest unlock to not only getting that time back, but finding more ways to now do more with that time that I got back to then steal it back again, create automated workflows. Like while we've been having this conversation, I have my workflow running on a podcast that I appeared on, and that's all running in the background. I but I used to have to do all that manually. Now I don't. Now I
Hmm.
don't. So now I can coach my son's basketball team. So now I can go and put an hour into writing a week's worth of tweets, which I do with an AI ghostwriter that's based on, you know, information being fed back from my Twitter profile and custom prompts that I've built over time. Obsessively focused on stealing back time. That's like everything that I think about now. How can I get back more time to do more, to spend more time with my son? That's the focus.
So basically, what you just told me is you're using AI to coach your son's basketball team.
It's actually not even that far away. So
That's a headline right
here's
there.
the hilarious part of that, and I'll give you. So my son, like a lot of kids, maybe there's some parents listening that this will help. COVID impacted a lot of kids, and especially around the learning curve for reading. It was really really hard. My son was completely remote for a year and a half, so there's a lot of kids who are set back on the reading element that has impacted their writing, and it's a lot of kids. It's a lot of kids. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, wait a second. My son is having struggle, or my son is struggling with reading. Okay, I can help him with that, audiobooks and things like that. But the real hard part he's having is translating what he's reading into a 2-page paper. I was like, how can I help him? I was like, well, this is just a podcast. So I have a couple of little lapel microphones. He clips on a mic, I clip on a mic. I record it to my phone, I interview him. And I just ask him questions. Hey, what'd you learn? What did you think about that? I just do a podcast interview with my son for we've done a couple now. They're all under 10 minutes. Quick 10-minute conversation. I record it and then I run it through my podcast workflow. And he gets what? A transcript, a bunch of idea starters. And guess what he does with that transcript? He takes that transcript and now he's taking it and turning it into the 2-page report.
That's wild.
And that's the opportunity, I think, from like, how do we take this stuff and how do we start teaching our kids? Right? Like my son's school wants they talk about text to speech like it's a tool for students with disabilities. And I'm sure that there's students with disabilities that it's a very critical tool for. However, it's also how I do my podcast. So why wouldn't you teach my kid? Why are you putting my son through something torturous that's hard for him to do? So that's, I think, like the long tail to all the things we're doing right now, working on in business, is like, how does that start to translate, right? What did your teachers tell you? They told me the same thing. What was it? You're not always going to have a calculator. Bullshit. I have Chat GPT on my phone. Right? So don't tell my kid he's not going to have a Chat GPT on his phone. He's probably going to have AR glasses. You know what I mean? So like the opportunity is to lean in, especially for any parents or aunts and uncles out there. If you have an opportunity to influence a child in your life right now with some of the things that you're learning in business, think about how it can apply to them. It was really cool to see my son, to see the lights come on and him go, oh, wait, I can do this. I could do a 2-page paper with no problem. I just talked to my dad for 8 minutes and I cranked out like 4 pages. This is crazy, right? I just have to clean it up. So that's how I think about these things.
That's cool. I think that's something that as a parent you do start thinking. I don't think about that. I don't have kids, but I can imagine like taking some of these business principles, these business processes, these business thoughts. How do I apply that to my life? Because they work here, right? In the business world, we're thinking about processes. We're thinking about transactions. It's basically the same thing where it's a transaction of information. Yeah. It's how am I taking this and I'm giving it to this, right? So when we think about it that way, I can really imagine that utilizing a lot of business back to the family versus the other way around. So we see it a lot the other way around where people think about my family values in my business.
That's such a great point.
I don't think about people taking their business values to their family very often.
Wow. That's a really good
I don't see people talking about that.
And I think, right, like, and if it just becomes, and maybe I'm lucky in this way because it is just me and I'm all by myself. So I don't have many people to run any of my decisions past. But like my son knows exactly what is going on in the business as much as I know what's going on in his school life. And like we just operate as one harmonious unit. It's all the same principles that I operate the podcast and my business by are the same principles that I raised my son by. And yeah, again, maybe it's easier when you're just a committee of one, but I think that it's a good thing. If you would run your business, if you would run your business that way, why wouldn't you run your household that way? Or flip the question, why aren't you running your business the way that you're running your household? Why would they be different? Unless you're obviously in like a questionable business, a legal questionable business. But yeah, I think that.
Hey man, the mafia is a family, aren't they? It's the mafia family.
That's a great point. You know what? Yeah,
right. It's all the same thing.
It's just part of the family.
That's so funny. So one more thing here before we wrap up. You said you were in the Marines, but you also said you don't think you get a lot of your structure from that.
Yeah.
The people I know in the business world that were in the military, probably some of the most structured people I know. They're very structured. They're very process oriented. They are 1, 2, 3. This is my process. This is what I do every single time. It's interesting that you say that you aren't necessarily like that, but you are very processed, right? So I guess, what do you take from your military background and apply it over to your business,
Yeah.
if anything?
Yeah. No, it's a good question and a fair question. And I'll clarify like the not discipline. I don't shave every day, you know. I don't right. I
Same.
don't necessarily like. So I guess yeah, I'm probably more structured than I actually admit to. The number one thing that I took from my military experience was I worked in a function where I was responsible for really expensive stuff. Really expensive stuff that had to have 100% accountability. So they were like helicopter parts, engines, computers, top secret computers, helicopter blades, like $250,000 for a helicopter blade, like $500,000 for a computer.
Oh, wow.
So at a young age, I was exposed to two things that I use every day in my life: accountability for high ticket professional like excellence that I use every single day in my life. That is such a direct translation to what I do in advertising. It's being accountable to very high 6 and 7 figure investments and clients and the stakeholders that come with them. So that was the number one thing that I would say where the Marine Corps has influenced me professionally was getting me used to at a very young age being accountable for lots and lots of money.
I love that. I love that. I'm sure your clients love that
I
too.
think so. I think so because it is right. Like it's the same as giving it to a financial advisor just for your business, right? Hey, I'm going to give you a half
Right.
million dollars because I trust that this campaign is going to generate a positive return on investment.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go.
One thing I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but with a helicopter
Yeah.
blade, there's a standard for that. If it's compromised in any way,
Yes.
it's gone. You lost $250,000. I can imagine that you have that same kind of accountability, that same kind of standard for other stuff too. Like in your business, now you're taking that same process where it has to be this good. You cannot make mistakes because if you make mistakes, it's
Mm-hmm.
gone. But in business, we can't make mistakes
Mm-hmm.
either, right? We have clients paying us, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. What's the difference? You can't mess that up either. That's a lot of money. So I would imagine that taking that same, accountability, that same standard and applying it over to your business would also be a huge factor that probably helps you run your business a ton.
A ton. And I can. This is anecdotal, but I'll share it because I think it's relevant. Like at a young, early age, professionally, I built that. Right, I built that muscle for high ticket transactions and accountability around it. However, as a consumer, I don't live, lavishly or outside my means. You live pretty simple life. I had a role as startup as VP of marketing and had a very generous marketing budget to spend, but I didn't spend it. And it wasn't because I didn't have ideas or I couldn't execute on the ideas. What I found was that it was a bigger marketing budget than I'd never been responsible for like my own internal team's marketing budget. I'd never been a VP of marketing before. And my consumer tendencies were impacting my ability to spend marketing budget. I was looking for areas to save money. I was thinking too much versus like, hey, go out, deploy capital, test, learn, iterate, optimize, go, 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 go. I was taking too long to make decisions, thinking about, all of the financial ramifications. Is this the best way to do it? Maybe I could find, and there's a degree to that, right? It's you got to be a good financial steward, but as a consumer, because I wasn't used to spending money that way before, it impeded my ability to perform the job. So I think like taking an honest look at, back to personal versus household and how we run our businesses, like how do our personal like consumer beliefs ultimately show up in our business? Because they can be good and they can be bad things, and they're definitely there. So being self-aware enough to find them.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, we have that conversation pretty regularly with us, like internally. where, a lot of my consumer beliefs right into business.
No
I
kidding.
think it's very in line with me. Like, well, yeah, me with how I am. Like for example, I want to do the right
Mm-hmm.
thing the first time.
Mm.
What I don't want to do is I don't want to build something because I can't quite do the right
Yeah.
thing, but I'm gonna get something to get me by. Because I know I'm just gonna do the right thing at some point. I might as well just do it now. So I have this quote that I always say with people. It's buy nice or buy twice.
Ooh.
Just buy the right thing the first time. Do
Yeah.
it right the first time. Why wouldn't you? It's gonna save you so much time. It's gonna save you so much money, even if it's more expensive today. Just do it right the first time. And what's interesting is we talk with a lot of brands who, they want to cut corners, but it's not necessarily because they want to cut corners. It's because they don't see that big picture. Because really cutting corners is not cutting corners. If you think about if you're, I don't know if you're an F1 guy or not. If you watch F1, you might have a very aggressive pass that you probably shouldn't have done, but you get the pass. But you're going to have to give it back because that's the rules. Right? You cut the corner, but you actually have to go backwards. So you're going to get penalized for cutting that corner in the long run here. So same kind of thing within business. Just do it right the first time. Buy nice or buy twice, right? Because if you don't do that, you're just going to be spinning your gears. The worst part, to me at least, especially on the consumer side, is you know what you want. Just do the thing that you want to do.
Right. If you were doing a kitchen remodel, you would do like the big overhead thing with the island and the hibachi station, like because that's what you would do because that's what you would want.
Exactly. And when you don't do that, you're going to look at the thing you do have and you're going to wish it was the thing you wanted.
Forever and ever and ever. The difference is in business, right, is that there is a little bit of that detachment where, well, this is definitely not going to be my last job, right? I'm probably going to be somewhere else in 2, 3 years or whatever the case may be. And there's not that sense of ownership, right? But what if you were the founder? Would the founder really want to save an extra $2,500 to not put in the hibachi thing? Probably not. Just do it. Put the hibachi thing in, and they'll thank you later. They'll thank you later.
Exactly. And what's interesting about that, and so we've got a lot of brands where we work directly with the founder.
Oh, cool.
But we also have a lot of brands where we work with, their VP of marketing or their marketing director or one of their marketing people. The mentality there, mind-bogglingly different. The founder, they have that emotional attachment. It's their business. It's their baby. Yeah. They have to be perfect. They want to have, this and that, or they want to save money. They're like, it's kind of a lot. I don't know. I could see the bigger picture of things. I could spend my money somewhere else. We talked to a marketing director. They're like, just do it right. It's not their money.
Just do it right.
Just do it right. It's not their money. They're not thinking about the actual dollar amount. They're thinking about the end result of the product.
Just do it right.
Which
is kind of good direction. Also subjective. A little bit subjective.
Well, for sure. But when we think of it this way, is they're disassociating their investment with the product, right? They know what they need. Yeah. They're going to do the right thing the first time. They're not going to buy it twice. If they don't do it right the first time, they're going to do it twice. We see a lot with like website stuff, right? It's like, do I fix the thing that I have? It's really broken. We built it in 2015. It's old. Or do we just start fresh, build something new that is, modern, right? We don't want to band-aid an old foundation. Same kind of thing. A founder, they might have built that website in 2015.
Right. By hand with late nights and like getting kicked out of their apartment. And there's probably some emotional attachment to that.
Yeah. Whether it's emotional attachment or financial attachment, they can be like, $25,000 for our website. Are you crazy?
Yeah, that's a good point. Sure.
That marketing director comes in, they're like,
bro, it's cheap.
$25,000. Yeah, sure. That's great. Let's do it. So we have that because, again, they're not the one writing the check out of their bank account. And so it really, when you start breaking things down that way, because the founder, they might have emotional attachment to that bank account, right? Where is that emotional attachment?
Where is the emotional attachment? Ooh, that's a good one.
Very, Interesting. That is a
That's a
good one.
good
I
one.
like that. Timestamp that. 110.
There it
Timestamp
is.
that.
Where's the emotional attachment?
But yeah, I think that is something that in business is tough, and business and family I think are a big crossover there because obviously family very emotional, business not as emotional there, but similar principles, similar process, similar decision making. It comes into that same process there. Obviously, I'm a very process oriented
Hmm.
person. And so when we start thinking about those, it just comes into what am I attached to? Where is my emotional attachment on either one of those? So much crossover.
It's really interesting. I appreciate the conversation. It's helping me to think through things that maybe I didn't realize were as closely connected as they are.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I can imagine just gets even more closely connected as a parent, right? Because now you have a whole different outlook on life.
It's totally different, and I think the cool part has been teaching my son about just how like simple businesses in our town work, how the pizzeria makes money, right? We go there enough, like, hey, do you understand that they have to buy all of their supplies, and they have to pay for rent, and they have to pay for people, they have to pay for lights and delivery drivers, right? And then that's how you come up with the price. So when your Looney Tune friends are like saying nonsense or something, like you actually know what's going on. Like I think that that's
Yeah.
important.
Why? Yeah. Why is it $12 for a
Right.
pizza?
Here's why, because the
Well,
food cost is XYZ, and this is a really expensive
yep.
part of town, and they pay top dollar rent because they're in this great store next to the dance studio or what, like, and there's just to me, there's not enough of that being taught in school, right? Kind of coming back to like the AI stuff, and ways that we can take what we do every day. And I think this too is especially for the work from home audience, which I'm sure is a large part of this audience, is your kids see they see you in your office every day. That's different, right? We typically, as kids ourselves, didn't see our parents at work except for one day out of the year, right? A
Never.
take your child to work day. And then if they worked at a big company, you didn't actually see them. They just jammed you in a room with all the other kids and you did arts and crafts and then like got a snack. But now, like, your kids see you working every single day. Why not? Why not teach them about what you do and let them? My son has helped me. Like he has helped me learn things. Here, this is a good one. I mentioned that startup I was at. There's a little like squishy thing inside this roll of medical tape. It's been on my desk for like 3 years. His name is Scrunchy, and Scrunchy inspired the mascot of the startup I was at. B2B, out of home advertising marketplace startup. How do you make B2B content cool? Well, you add a cute little monster to it. So, like, my son has influenced more business decisions than he probably realizes at this life. Maybe he'll listen back to this someday and realize just how influential he's been. But yeah, Steve Jobs said great ideas can come from anywhere. You know what? If you got a kid, you got a little test pod there that you can ask a lot of good questions to and learn a lot. My YouTube shorts, the way that I edit my YouTube shorts is based on me watching my son consume content on our living room TV. He watches YouTube on our TV, and then he'll get watching shorts, and I sit right here and I'll watch and I'll be like, why is and I'll ask him like, why did you just watch that YouTube short 4 times in a row? And he'll tell me why. And then I'll go back and I'll apply that to what I'm doing with my own content. And guess what? Since I started doing that, all of the completion rates on my business to business podcast about out of home billboards, my completion rates on YouTube are like 90% plus because I paid
Wow.
attention to the content that my kid consumes. And I started editing my YouTube shorts like the stuff that my son watches. I wouldn't have been watching
That's
YouTube
insane.
Shorts, right? I would like it's really incredible. So yeah, just watch, study consumer behavior, but especially study your kids' behavior because that Gary Vee has been talking about voice search is going to take over the internet for the last decade. Before COVID,
Eventually he's going to be right. Eventually he's going to
but
be
he
right.
is right, and he's right now, right? Like, and that's part, that's part of it. It's just like saying a bunch of things, and then like eventually he'll be right on some of them. He's been talking about that forever. But what happened? I just told you, right? COVID. COVID forced my kid to learn from home for a year and a half. He's behind on reading. When he texts me, it's always voice to text. When he searches on YouTube, it's always search this YouTube video. 99% of what my son does is voice driven.
Wow.
Yeah. So guess what?
That's wild.
That in 7 years is consumer behavior.
That's wild. See, I am almost the opposite of that personally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do any voice.
Same. I don't either. It's never right. It doesn't.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
for him,
And
it's
so,
easier. It's less stressful, and there's an entire generation of kids like that around the country, right? And
like
they're going to be your consumers in the next 5 to 7 years.
That's wild.
wild.
Hey, goes back to it. Gary Vee was right.
But coming full circle, the way that they consume content today, they're not suddenly going to become adults and be like, I only watch series on Netflix. That's not going to happen. He's still going to be watching YouTube or whatever. Like the consumer behavior is the thing to study, and kids are the indicator of what's coming. What is the next generation going to look like?
And what's interesting about that is it goes into like that consumer behavior and how it adapts.
Yeah.
Over time. It's a similar process over time for, our generation versus kids' generation. There's an interesting, like, I guess, curve to that where it's like they just kind of get a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. What's interesting to me, like, that I'm so curious about with this next generation is information overload. Because I already feel like I have information overload.
Totally.
And I couldn't imagine being, a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old right now where I've got everything at my fingertips. And going back to school, when I was a kid, I had to go and read something, right? I had to go and, read a book to go and learn something. I had to
get the
learn how to do things that way.
To look up cheetah to understand it runs 64 miles per hour or whatever.
Yeah. And so now I think kids, and again, don't have kids here, but I can see kids now, they're not necessarily learning how to do that, but they're learning the process for how to get the information. How instead of going and finding that information, how can they have a tool, and how do they use that tool to bring the information to them?
And then what are you going to do with it? Right?
Exactly. How do you take that? How do you understand what it is and how to use it? But then also, is it right?
Is it right? Right. Understanding how to check your own work. And that's where I think, going back to the AI stuff,
exactly.
Like being a master of whatever the content is allows you to do all of those things. I'll go down rabbit holes where I'm just sound checking ideas with ChatGPT.
That's a good idea.
Like
I like that.
Testing my own line of thinking. Is this logically sound? How hard can I push against my own ideas until they'll break? Because I want to know that before I ever go put it on the internet. Before I go step into the arena that is Twitter, I want to know that I've already fought this argument out to the end, and I know exactly how it plays out. Right? Like, again, I guess it's coming back to that self-awareness thing and being willing to lean into, hey, I don't know everything. But if I know how to create the output, or if I know that I'm willing to figure out how to create the output, you're a huge advantage over everyone in your career field, everyone in your market, everyone, if you can figure that out.
And I think that's going to be the biggest driver for the next decade of who rises and who doesn't.
Because it's like when I hear people, AI is going to replace everybody. No, it's going to replace. Here's who it's going to play. I'll tell you exactly who it's going to replace. It's going to replace the people that don't adapt and don't adopt it now and are resistant. It's definitely going to replace those people, because those people right now are a net negative to some business owners' bottom line. That is someone who's gatekeeping information, gatekeeping a process. Because if I can teach a robot about out of home measurement and how to measure billboards deterministically, then I promise I can teach the robot how to do your job. I'm sure of it. You're just in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually you're going to get replaced. The people who are going to rise to the top are the ones who can become the masters of it. Like, I know there's like that joke of like, hey, like you could just be good at Googling something, replace that with chat GPTing something, or whatever the
Yeah.
AI tool is. Something that I did over the summer that was a big unlock for the podcast was I sat down and I wrote out job descriptions of all the people I wish I could hire for
That's a
all the
good
work I
idea.
didn't want to do. All of the most painful parts of the process. And I wrote out, and I had 4 different job descriptions. And one of them was motion. One of them I solved with motion. I wanted someone to just handle my calendar and take that away. The other was a team of copywriters, or like a copywriter and a video editor. And then I went out to find AI tools to do those things for me. And I've shared the workflow with you. But that's the workflow that's running right now in the background while I'm here talking to you. And it takes the original source input, it takes the hour-long podcast that I've given it, team of copywriters doing its thing, got my transcript, got my show notes, got summaries, got titles, got newsletters, got articles, got guest bio, all done automatically. And then the team of video editors are going to identify 15 to 20 clips from that I'll take. Now, where I reinvest my time is, right, the theme of stealing back time. I reinvest all of my time, all of my time into finishing the clips. I've gotten the process down to about 3 to 5 minutes per clip, but all the time
Mm-hmm.
that I got back not doing show notes, not doing titles, not doing key moments and timestamps and tags and all that other stuff, all that time I got back, I now invest into those clips. So I'll do a half-hour podcast. Let's just use a half-hour podcast. From a half-hour podcast, I will get 7 clips. 7 clips times 5 minutes. It's 35 minutes of effort. The last 25 minutes of that hour, I post everything to YouTube. YouTube is my source of truth. It's the distribution hub. And then it goes out to all of the other socials on custom auto schedulers from there. From a half-hour podcast and 1 hour of effort. Now there's some more stuff in there. It's probably about 2 hours for a podcast. But if I can steal back that much time and create that much impact with 2 hours of effort, gosh, what could you do in your business?
Huge.
Huge.
And now, even taking that a step further, if you teach other people in your
Yeah.
business how to do the exact same thing, now you take it's like basically an exponential growth,
Yeah.
right? You have, you're one person. Imagine if you had 10 people using the same process to do stuff. 10 people now become 100 people.
How much more can you
Now
do?
you have a big
Right.
company.
Now you got a big company and you
Exactly.
didn't increase headcount. You didn't have to train new people. You didn't have to hire and onboard and, benefits and all those other things. So that's the opportunity. Yeah. I think it's really going to shape the next 10 years as it plays out, but there's going to be some early winners and losers, and that time that
Oh yeah.
clock has already started, and you can win in some real big ways right now.
Yeah, or lose and fall behind real quick.
It's true. Like, I don't know, did you see
So,
this thing that, I don't know when this is going to come out, but the guy who tricked the car dealer chat GPT bot into selling him a car for $1? Have you seen this? Oh my
no.
gosh. It
You'll have
literally just happened yesterday. Blew up on Reddit and on Twitter. A car dealership that was using a chat bot powered by ChatGPT. Somebody realized it was ChatGPT powered, and they started prompting the bot and ultimately got the bot to sell them a car for $1. No contracts were signed. There was no financing or anything like that. But
wow.
what happened after that was the person who figured this out went to Reddit, shared it on Reddit. You know what happens on Reddit? Like,
Oh, it goes
it went
crazy.
crazy. So now you've got a dealership digging out from like going viral for all the wrong reasons. All of that terrible website traffic that you're going to have to figure out and parse out, and like how much, like, I would not want to be sitting there today. But yeah, it can also go really
Yeah.
badly too when you don't think through some of those longer tail elements.
Yeah. And we'll have to find that. We'll put that in our show notes here because I want to see that. So send
All
that
right,
over.
I'll
We'll put that
find it.
in the notes here for everybody else. Well, Tim, we've been here for a while. I appreciate you jumping on here. Before we leave, though, where can people find you?
Oh yeah. So the oohinsider.com is the best place to find the podcast. There's 4 years of content. A kid that's the Stanford MBA of out of home, but the oohinsider.com, lots and lots of resources, podcasts, blogs, tools. There's a lot of information there. On all the socials, I'm OOH Insider, and on LinkedIn you can find me Tim Rowe. Pretty easy to find. So thank you, Nicholas. Thank you for
Perfect.
the
We'll have
opportunity.
all those links in there. Yeah, Tim, thank you so much for jumping on here. Episode
In
one,
the books.
we
You
did
did
it.
it.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for
See
jumping
you
on
in
here.
four
Appreciate
years.
it. See ya.